Welcome to the Sleeping Archive, where history comes alive through the voices of those who lived it.
The Old Stables. My name is Pascal Moreau, and I have driven kings through the streets of Paris. Not anymore, of course. These days, I drive for the Republic. Grain wagons, supply carts, sometimes prisoners. The irony is not lost on me that today, on this gray January morning in 1793, I will witness the final journey of the man whose carriages I once guided through cheering crowds. The cobblestones beneath my feet are the same ones that once echoed with the clip-clop of royal horses. I know every rut, every uneven stone between the Tuileries and Versailles. I could navigate these streets blindfolded, guided only by the rhythm of wheels and the memory of 1,000 journeys. But memory, I have learned, is both a blessing and a curse. I wake each morning in my small room above Citizen Fouché's stable yard, the same space where I once polished the brass fittings of the royal coach until they gleamed like captured sunlight. The smell of leather and hay remains constant, but everything else has changed. The gilded carriages with their silk cushions and crystal windows, replaced now by rough-hewn carts and Republican simplicity. Where once I wore the blue and gold livery of the House of Bourbon, I now dress in the practical brown wool of a working citizen. I remember the Queen's laughter behind velvet curtains, the pop of champagne glasses clinking, just beyond my line of sight. I was never meant to see, only to deliver. A good driver knew how to disappear. But even in silence, I heard things, flirtations, gossip, careless laughter about taxes, and grain riots. This morning feels different. The air carries a heaviness, like the moments before a thunderstorm, when even the horses grow restless. I have felt this weight building for weeks, ever since the trial began, ever since they sentenced him to death. Louis Capet, they call him now. No longer Louis XVI, by the grace of God, King of France and Navarre. Just Louis Capet. Citizen, condemned man. But I remember when he was simply Monsieur, the awkward prince who stumbled getting into carriages and always asked about my family. He was never a graceful man, never comfortable with ceremony. Perhaps that was his downfall, or perhaps it was simply his time. I pull my coat tighter against the January cold and walk toward the window. From here I can see the street where they will bring him. The route is shorter than the grand processions of old. No longer the ceremonial path from Versailles to Notre Dame, but a grim passage. From the Temple prison to the Place de la Révolution. From captivity to death in less than 2 miles. The streets are already filling despite the early hour. I can see citizens gathering. Some with the eager faces of those who believe they witness history, others with the grim determination of duty. Children dart between adults, not fully understanding what they will see, but sensing its importance. Vendors hawk hot chestnuts and bread because even on execution days, life continues its mundane rhythms. I think of Marie Antoinette, still imprisoned in the Temple. Does she know? Can she hear the preparations from her window? She once gave me a gold coin for Christmas, pressed into my palm with a smile that held no condescension, only genuine warmth. "For your children, Pascal," she said. "The gold coin is still hidden beneath my mattress. I could not bring myself to spend it, not even during the worst of the food shortages. Revolutionary or not, some loyalties run deeper than politics. My neighbor, Citizen Roussel, appears at his window across the courtyard. He waves. I wave back. He knows about my former employment. Everyone in the quarter does. "We are all citizens now," he says. "What matters is what we do for the Republic." But what am I doing for the Republic this morning? Witnessing the execution of my former master seems both a patriotic duty and a personal betrayal. But I will do it. Because someone must remember, not just the king who died, but the man who was afraid of crowds, who loved mechanical toys, and who always worried that he was disappointing his grandfather's memory. The sun climbs higher, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. Soon the shadows will be shorter, and a king will be dead. I finish my bread and prepare to join the crowd. History is calling, and I have always answered when duty summoned me to harness the horses and open the carriage door. Today I will open no doors. Today I will only watch as the last door closes. The streets fill slowly, like water finding its level. I make my way toward the temple, not because I am assigned to the procession, but because I cannot stay away. My feet follow paths worn smooth by years of service, though the destinations have changed. Where once I traveled between palace and opera, stable and salon, now I move through a city of citizens who still struggle to understand what they have become. I pass the bakery where Madeleine once worked, before she joined the march to Versailles. The windows are shuttered today. No bread will be sold until after the execution. The baker's wife, Citizen Leroux, stands in her doorway, watching the growing crowd. She nods to me with recognition, but says nothing. What is there to say? We are all witness to something unprecedented. Young Etienne appears beside me, no longer the eager apprentice I remember from the storming of the Bastille. The Revolution has aged him, given weight to his shoulders and caution to his eyes. He carries papers under his arm, perhaps printing the official account even as the event unfolds. He was just a boy when I first saw him handing out pamphlets during the storming. Eyes bright, hands ink-stained, heart filled with fire. Today he walks beside me like a man carved from the rubble of revolution. Where once he spoke with fever, now he listens with gravity. He has grown into the Republic's silence. Pascal, he says quietly, you came. I had to, I reply, and he understands. Without further explanation, we walk together in comfortable silence. Two men who have watched the world change around them. The crowd grows thicker as we approach the temple tower, that forbidding medieval fortress where they have kept the royal family prisoner for these past months. I know its walls from the outside. I brought messages there in the early days, before my services were no longer required. It reminds me of the crowd at Saint-Menehould, the night of the king's failed escape. That sickening pause as the postmaster recognized Louis, not by crown or cloak, but by his coin, the king's face on currency. Irony pressed in metal. I saw it days later in the eyes of soldiers dragging them back to Paris. The shame of a monarch caught fleeing his people like a thief in the night. The National Guard forms neat lines along the route, their uniforms crisp despite the cold. I recognize some faces from the old Royal Guard, men who once protected the king, now serving the republic that condemned him. Their expressions are carefully neutral, professional. They understand duty, even when duty becomes complicated. Commissioner Santerre rides past on horseback, reviewing the preparations. He sees me and nods slightly. We have met before. He was a brewer in the Faubourg Saint-Antoine, now commanding the forces that will escort Louis to his death. Everything must proceed with order, I hear him tell his subordinates. No delays, no incidents. History is watching. History is indeed watching, though I wonder what it will remember. A commotion near the temple entrance draws my attention. The doors are opening. Figures move in the shadowed archway. My heart begins to beat faster, though I cannot say whether from anticipation or dread. After months of imprisonment, Louis will emerge into daylight for the last time. The first figure is not Louis, but Abbé Edgeworth, the Irish priest permitted to accompany the king in his final hours. His face is pale but composed, his cassock dark against the gray stone. Then Louis himself. He looks smaller than I remembered. Perhaps it is the simple brown coat or the weight of what lies ahead. For a moment our eyes meet across the crowd. Does he recognize me? I cannot be certain, but something in his expression softens. I want to call out, but what would I say? Good morning, Your Majesty. Grotesquely inappropriate. Farewell, Louis. Too familiar. So I say nothing, but I do not look away. We move through Paris like a funeral procession, though whose funeral this might be remains unclear. The king's, certainly, but perhaps also the funeral of France as we have known it. Each street holds memories for me, not just of royal journeys, but of my own life in this city that has transformed itself beyond recognition. Here is the corner where I waited while Louis attended Mass at Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois. The church stands empty now, its doors sealed by revolutionary decree. The bells that once called the faithful to prayer have been melted down to make cannons, yet I can still hear their ghostly chiming in memory. Still see the king emerge from morning prayers with that peculiar expression of peace that only faith ever brought him. Did you know him well? Etienne asked beside me. The young printer has stayed close, perhaps sensing I carry stories worth preserving. Well enough, I reply, watching Louis in the cart ahead. He was kind to his servants, always remembered our names, asked about our families. Not all nobles bothered with such things. Etienne scribbles notes on a scrap of paper. The trial records say he cared more about locks and keys than affairs of state. Perhaps that was his problem, I say. Kings should understand people as well as they understand mechanisms. The cartwheels strike a loose cobblestone, jolting the passengers. Louis grips the side for stability, but does not cry out. We pass the old Hôtel de Soubise. I once waited outside elegant parties there until dawn. The windows are dark now. The noble family fled or dead. Revolution redistributes everything. Palaces, power, and the simple comforts of familiar routine. A woman in the crowd calls out, "Look at him. Still thinks he's better than us." But her voice lacks conviction. What is there to see? A middle-aged man in a plain coat, riding to his death with what dignity he can preserve. The priest beside him continues to speak softly. I cannot hear the words, but I recognize the rhythm of prayer, the cadence of last rites. My father died with the priest beside him, whispering similar comforts into ears that might or might not still hear. Death makes children of us all, regardless of crown or cottage. We turn onto the Rue Saint-Honoré, and I feel a familiar tightening in my chest. This is the street where the old monarchy displayed its magnificence most proudly. I remember driving Louis and Marie Antoinette down this very road for their coronation journey to Reims. The crowds then pressed close with joy, reaching out to touch the golden carriage, calling blessings on their new king and queen. Women wept with emotion at the sight of such splendor. Today, fathers lift their children to witness execution instead. Someone mutters. The Austrian woman watches from her window. She cannot see this street from the temple. But rumor travels faster than truth in revolutionary Paris. Perhaps she stands at her narrow window, pressing her face to the cold glass, trying to hear the sounds that will tell her when her husband has died. The crowd grows thicker as we near the Place de la Révolution. Citizens climb lampposts and window ledges for a glimpse. Others push forward, trying to see the condemned man's face. A group of sans-culottes marches beside the cart, singing revolutionary songs, but their voices feel forced. Even the most ardent Republicans seem to recognize the weight of this moment. Killing a king is not like storming a fortress. It is crossing a line that cannot be uncrossed, severing a thread that once tied heaven to earth. Louis continues speaking with the priest, glancing at the crowd, his expression not fearful, but almost relieved. Perhaps there is mercy in this ending. Release from responsibilities no mortal man was meant to bear. Ahead, we hear the sound of hammering, the scaffold being readied. The rhythm is mechanical, like a clock. Louis always loved mechanisms, the way pieces click together. Perhaps now he sees how the pieces of revolution fit as precisely as his cherished gears and springs. The cart rolls steadily forward, carrying us all toward answers we may not want to find. The Place de la Révolution opens before us like a vast amphitheater of judgment, where once stood the statue of Louis XV, grandfather to the man now riding toward his death. There rises instead a wooden platform bearing the machine that has become the symbol of revolutionary justice. The guillotine stands silent and waiting, its blade catching what little sunlight penetrates the gray January sky. I have seen this square filled with celebration and ceremony, watched from the driver's seat as royal processions circled the statue in tribute to the Sun King's legacy. Now, the square hosts a different kind of ceremony. The crowd forms a vast circle around the scaffold. Perhaps 20,000 souls gather to witness the end of monarchy in France. The cart comes to a halt. Louis looks up at the guillotine, that mechanical marvel designed to deliver swift, equal death to all, regardless of class. For the first time, I see curiosity in his expression. The man who loved precision now faces the final mechanism. Commissioner Santerre approaches. "Citizen Capet," he says formally, "it is time." Louis nods and begins to stand. The priest offers his arm, but Louis waves him away. He will face this final moment under his own power. The crowd grows quiet, 20,000 people holding their breath, waiting to see how a king dies. Louis pauses at the foot of the scaffold. His gaze moves across the faces of his former subjects. From where I stand, I see mainly uncertainty. The faces of people who know they are witnessing something, but do not yet understand what. He climbs the steps, 12 in total, 12 steps between life and death. The executioner, Charles-Henri Sanson, waits. I have heard his family served kings for generations. Today, he serves the Republic. But the tools of his trade remain unchanged. Louis stops. For a moment it seems he will speak. Santerre steps forward, but Louis raises a hand in that familiar gesture. "Citizens," he says, "I die innocent of the crimes of which I am accused. I forgive those who condemn me to death, and I pray that my blood will not bring new misfortunes upon France." The words hang in the cold air. I have never heard him speak with such simplicity. Perhaps death strips away everything unnecessary, leaving only the essential human core. Santerre gives the signal. The assistants step forward. They bind his hands, remove his coat. Louis submits, but I see the effort it takes to remain still as strange hands arrange him for death. They cut his hair short. I think of all the ceremonies where that hair was powdered, styled, royal. Now it falls to the boards like any other vanity. The priest murmurs Latin prayers, the syllables caught in the wind. Louis kneels, then rises. and walks to the machine. I cannot watch. I have driven this man through 20 years of reign, seen him dine, dance, suffer. I knew his voice. When the blade falls, I turn away. The sound is brief, a whistle of metal, a heavy thud, silence. Then, a roar from the crowd. It is done. Louis XVI is dead. The executioner raises the severed head. The chant rises. Long live the Republic! Long live the nation! But the voices sound strained. Like actors in a tragedy they cannot escape. I look around. I see my own confusion on every face. What have we accomplished? Are we freer? Or have we only proven that no life is sacred, no authority permanent, and no tradition immune to the crowd's judgment? Etienne murmurs, "History." "Yes," I reply. "But whose history? And what will it say about us?" The crowd disperses. Some linger, dipping handkerchiefs in royal blood. Others flee, perhaps disturbed by their own participation. I remain, staring at the empty platform. The body is gone. The blood is washed. But something remains. A new world is being born here. In pain, in blood, and in uncertainty. We have killed our king. But what kind of people does that make us? The sky presses gray over the square. And at last, I turn away to tend the horses, drive the carts, and live in the republic we have made, with our witness and our silence. The stable is quiet when I return, though the city beyond continues its strange celebration. Through my window I hear scattered singing, the occasional shout of revolutionary slogans, but the sounds feel hollow, as if echoing in an empty room. Paris is trying to convince itself that it has accomplished something glorious, but the effort shows. I sit on my narrow cot and remove my boots, the same boots I wore for royal processions, for Republican parades, for ceremonies of crowning, and now for ceremonies of execution. Leather remembers nothing. It takes the shape of the foot that wears it and serves without judgment. Perhaps that is wisdom, to serve faithfully while understanding that all service is temporary. My hands shake as I pour water into the basin. The trembling comes not from cold, but from the weight of witness. I have seen too much today, understood too much about the nature of power and the frailty of human institutions. When you watch a king die, you realize that all authority rests on agreement. And when that agreement ends, everything changes. There's a soft knock. I open the door to find Etienne, pale, thoughtful. The young printer who once shouted slogans in the street now looks like a man who has learned that revolution devours its own certainties. "May I come in?" he asks. I step aside. He enters my small room, my whole world since the old order collapsed. "I've been thinking," he says, "about what we witnessed, about what it means." "And what does it mean?" I ask. He hesitates. "I don't know. This morning I thought I understood justice, the end of tyranny, the birth of true freedom. But watching him die..." He trails off. I understand. Revolution is easier in theory than in practice, cleaner in pamphlets than in public squares. He was not a monster, I say. Louis was weak, indecisive, but not cruel. And today, he died like a man of courage. "The trial spoke of treason," Etienne says, "but I saw only a frightened man trying to do his duty." "Perhaps that's what treason is," I offer. "Not evil intention, but failure to understand how the world has changed around you." We sit in silence. Somewhere, the city celebrates. But here, two men try to understand what they've seen and what they have become by seeing it. "What happens now?" Etienne asks. "I don't know," I say. "Marie Antoinette is still in prison. The Dauphin, just Louis Charles now, still in the temple. The revolution continues, but I no longer pretend to understand where it leads." Etienne shows me his papers. "I want to record what you remember, not the king in robes, the man." "Very well," I say, But promise me the truth, not just the convenient version. I promise. So I begin to tell him about Louis, about the man, his awkwardness, his kindness, his fascination with locks and clocks, his quiet grief over the people suffering. As I speak, the weight shifts. Witnessing execution is not the same as remembering life. Perhaps this is my true service, not to throne or republic, but to the fragile complexity of truth itself. When Etienne leaves, I sit alone, and I wonder, did we trade kings for chaos? Or did we build something better, one piece at a time, through blood and hope and flawed hands? I blow out the candle. In my dreams, I drive a golden carriage through empty streets while church bells ring, changes I cannot understand. The horses know the way, even when the driver has lost his direction. Perhaps that is enough, to trust the journey, even when the destination remains unclear.
You've been listening to The Sleeping Archive. Sleep well. History will wait.